In the name of God. Quran says in some verses that we have explained about everything in Quran. That means all things we see in Quran, all questions we face in it, the answer to those questions is not outside this book, based on tiny little connections between words, roots, and verses. We can find our answers inside Quran. No need to check history, revelation, hadith, anything. Quran by Quran. The name of Prophet Lut is from same root as Lavaat. That means homosexuality or being gay. First surface question is, why should the name of Lut, this clean prophet of God, be taken from same root as Lavaat, means this ugly action? So what is this similarity for? Quran does not tell stories to let us know history lessons. Even there are many history hints in it, but the purpose is to let us extract patterns from those real stories so that we avoid doing same mistakes over time. Or else, what is the benefit for us today to realize, okay, the people of Lut have been guilty by doing Lavaat in those 2000, I don't know, something like that, years ago. A'udhu billah minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. The word Lut is mentioned in 27 verses of Quran, but the word Lavaat, homosexuality or being gay, is never mentioned in Quran even once. Of these 27 words, 10 times the name of Prophet is mentioned Luta, 17 times Lut. So both Lut and Luta point to the same person, same prophet in Quran. If you start checking from beginning of Quran, God tell us prophets like Zachariah and John and Jesus and Elias, Kullun minas salihin, all were of salihin. Salih is someone who islah or correct a mistake. So prophets were coming to solve and correct some fundamental problems in societies. And Ishmael and Elisha and Jonah and Luta or Lut, wa kullan fazzalna alal alamin. And all of them we offered fazilat, means we offered them more blessings compared to other nations. With the help of those prophets, we guided nations to recognize the right path, means their path was not correct, and they were not capable of recognizing they are doing wrong themselves, so we corrected their path with the help of teachings and warnings of some messengers, prophets. Finally, it concludes, if people ashraku, means take other methods and other directions rather than teachings of God and prophets in their lifetime, la habita, certainly becomes hapt or vain or destroy the result of what they are doing. So their actions in world will not benefit them in hereafter. If someone does not like to follow the direct path and not interested to correct his mistakes, he will lose long-term results, and that is his punishment. Now head back to the story of Lut. Based on natural order of Quran, chapter A'araf, verse 80 is the first verse explaining the details of the story. Waluta and Luta, Prophet Lut, is غَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ, when he said to his people of Lut, أَتَعْتُونَ. The word أَتَعْتُونَ is from root ataya. If we search this root in Quran, for instance here, fa'tu, bring a chapter like this. So it means bring, fa'tu. They said, this is what we receive rizq from before. Va'tu, and it is given similar to that today. So va'tu here means given, offered. We said ihbitu, from that all of you, And if or when يَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ was given to you from me a guidance, يَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ here means was given, was offered. So the root of أَتَعْتُونَ means giving something to someone. This exact word, أَتَعْتُونَ, is mentioned 3 times in Quran, all of them about people of Lut. So far, when Lut said to his people, أَتَعْتُونَ الْفَاحِشَةَ, are you bringing a fahisha, something clearly ugly and wrong, مَا سَبَغَكُمْ بِهَا, has not sibgha from you or had no sabiqa before you, any of other nations. So people of Lut has been doing a fahisha, ugly and wrong action, with a new way or with highest population following it among other nations in that time. And what was that fahisha? Next verse explains. Innakum, indeed you. Who is talking to who? Prophet Lut is talking to his people, his qawm, all of people of Lut, not just men or women, all of them. La ta'tuna. Check previous verse and also remember I explained the root of this word before. Indeed you are bringing or have brought what fahisha? What ugly thing you have brought? You bring al-rijal, your men, shahwatan, to lust by raising their sexual desire, min dunin nisa, without their own women. Al-nisa means known women, points to their wives' natural way of sexuality. So all people of Lut had invented fahisha or obviously wrong, ugly methods, unlike any other nations in their time or before them, to use those methods to rise up shahwa or sexual desire of men without the natural method of using their own women. Al-Nisa. Rather, you are transgressing people, means you are exceeding in sexuality and sexual desires, transgressing in shahwa, as it was not enough for them to enjoy sexually in bed with their partners, so they wanted more and invented more methods. وَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ, and the answer of his people was no other than, drive them out of your town, as there are some people who يَتَطَهَّرُونَ, means consider themselves clear and pure. They are old-fashioned people, something like that. So far we conclude, the fahisha or ugly method of people of Lut has been exceeding in shahwa and sexuality, to fulfill sexual desire of men using unnatural methods without sexual relation with their own wives. That method has been obviously wrong and ugly, means fahisha, not hidden for public, obvious for them and other nations. It has been an unclean method, as they said this to Lut and those following him. And finally, this is talking about all his people, not just men. So the question is, does this problem happen once in history of mankind, in people of Lut, or still in our advanced human societies we are experiencing the same, if not more? Isn't the body of women now a part of all advertisements and movies and posters to fulfill sexual desire of men, to rise the sexuality without sexual relation of men with their own wives? Does men just enjoy sexually from seeing and being with their own wives today? Or we have invented plenty of other methods, porn websites, sex toys, erotic photos, to satisfy this exceeding sexual need of men in our societies. فَأَنْجَيْنَاهُ, so we saved him, وَأَهْلَهُ, and his followers. Ahl of someone or those following him can be his family members, can be not. We saved Lut and his followers, إِلَّا مُرَعَتَهُ, except his wife. So her wife was also included in that fahisha. فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المجرمين. Consider then what was the end of mujrimin. Mujrim from root jarama is someone who is broken off with truth. So people of Lut has been broken up with path of nature, natural way of sex, and they received that azab or punishment in reply. Important note: that invented method of sex was not mentioned to be illegal in holy books before people of Lut. For instance, it was never mentioned in previous books that men are not allowed to satisfy their sexual needs with methods except sleeping with their own wives in bed. So they were not breaking any previous existing religious law, but they were breaking natural boundaries with inventing irrational, ugly methods. That was obviously not correct, even not mentioned in any books. And they were mujrim or guilty because of that. Like many new methods that we have invented today that are fahsha, ugly, irrational, like masturbation and sex toys, gay, lesbian, homosexuality, it is all spending our limited, valuable lifetime on vain and useless matters, ignoring the higher reason of life and being on earth. Like there is no higher goal of living than personal joy and freedom and sex and stuff like that. Chapter Mu'minun offer us a general key to let us survive and avoid such things. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Indeed, mu'minun will aflaha. Falaha means to become flourish, to give flower, to grow. So mu'minun will grow and become flourish themselves and their societies. But who are those mu'minun? Those who themselves الَّذِينَ هُمْ, those who themselves are khashih in their prayers, means they talk and connect with God not proudly. And those وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ, check these two hum, and those who themselves are mu'riz from lagv. Not that they fight with others who are wrongdoers, but they themselves separate their path from lagv actions and traditions. Lagv is whatever that is vain, useless for our long-term journey with no clear benefit or meaning for us as human beings. Okay, let's return back. There came our messengers to Abraham with good news. As we read later, these messengers were angels of God, 2 angels. So they were not man nor women. For Abraham, in what form and sex they were presented, only God knows. But it is not mentioned if those messengers were male or female here. But when Abraham saw their hands were not toward the meal they don't eat, obviously he was afraid if they are not friend and enemy, so they soon realized this misunderstanding of Abraham and announced, "We are delivered to people of Lut," means we have no harm for you. And his wife suddenly stood up, fazahikat, started laughing. What was funny? What was it that she found it muzhik or funny? Hearing the news that 2 messengers of God are delivered to people of Lut. It shows that people of Abraham, the neighbor nation of Lut, were well aware of their fahisha or ugly method of sexuality. So everyone realized people of Lut as wrongdoers. That is why in that verse it is mentioned it was new in all other nations. No other nation exceeded them in that fahisha or fahsha. So these messengers came to give good news to Abraham, but as Abraham was afraid and fearful from them, They rather explained to him that, okay, our main reason for being here is for going to Lut. So after that, they announced Abraham the good news. The good news was they are going to have a child, even they were so old, Abraham and his wife. يُجَادِلُنَا فِي قَوْمِ لُوطٍ. But rather than Abraham being happy and glad for his long time wish came true, he was very worried about people of Lut. It shows that he was not a selfish leader and not just thinking about his own personal benefits, and he was worried about other nations. Anyway, after this good news to Abraham, those messengers, angels, turned to city of Lut. And when our messengers came to Luta or Lut, he stopped or was shocked to see those two coming and said, Haza yawmun asib. Today is a tough day. Waja'ahu, and came to him, means to Lut. Qawmuhu, his people, means people of Lut. Yuhra'un, with hurry or like attacking, rushing to him. Ilayhi, to him, again means to Lut, not to those messengers. Look at these three ha at the end. Waja'ahu, qawmuhu, ilayhi. So people started to rush toward Lut, to the home of Lut. وَمِنْ قَبْلُ كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ السَّيِّئَاتِ. And before that, they used to do misbehave. So Lut was aware of their sinful background, that as soon as he saw those unknown messengers coming from a far distance, he realized, oh my God, today is a rough day. As he could imagine, all people will attack him to ask about those two strangers. So, the question is, in what form those two angels, messengers, were coming on earth to Lut and to his people? Man or women? قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ. Lut said, O my people, هَؤُلَاءِ بَنَاتِي. These, who are these? These messengers, these strangers, these that are coming are my daughters, or consider them as my daughters. They are like my daughters. Those coming messengers in form of females are my daughters. Consider them my daughters. هُنَّ أَطْهَرُ لَكُمْ. They are more clear for you. Remember they told Lut, you are يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. You are pretending to be tahir, clear. Lut replied that they are أَطْهَرُ لَكُمْ, means they are not your type. They are clean people. They are more clear to be used for your unclean and ugly methods of sexuality. It shows the people of Lut has no self-control over their sexual desire at all. And as you can see here, it contains attraction mainly to females, not attraction to men and Lavaat. Okay, and what about today? Are men and women really equal based on sexuality? Or women are used as tools to satisfy the sexual need of men? If a woman walk alone in a street, do we see her as a respectful human being of God? Or we stare at her body parts based on all wrong images from women that over time they have inserted into our mind? فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, and have fear from God, or have self-control for sake of God, and don't make me shy in front of my guests. So Lut, Prophet Lut, based on the background of his people, he is using some methods to force them to stop acting like that. First he says, these are my daughters. Consider them as my family. Because he was aware they do not break into family members. Then he adds, they are my guests. To encourage them, respect his guests. أَلَيْسَ مِنْكُمْ رَجُلٌ رَشِيدٌ. And as the last method, he says, isn't there any Rashid men in you? Means, don't you have any honor as a man? To encourage them to control themselves as the last shot. They said in reply to Lut, certainly you know that we have no claim on your daughters. Means, okay, Lut, you say these are my daughters. You know we don't have claim on your family members. But indeed you know, ma nurid, what we intend to do. What we have aradna, or decided to do. Means you are well aware of we are going to do what we want to do, soon or later. So it seems for a while, the method of Lut was succeeded. Means they did not attack Lut and his guests in that moment. Based on the next verse, you can see, Qala, he said, Qalu, they replied. There is a conversation, there is a dialogue between Lut and those guests. Qala, Lut said, to whom? To those unknown messengers in his home, in form of female. I wish I had power to you, means a power to protect you, or if there was a rukn or arkan or organization to treat hardly with such people, to help me fight with them or to protect you. But there is not. So there is not right and wrong measurement in that society. That's why some external messengers are there from God. Anyways, qalu, they said, those messengers replied to this sad story of Lut, we are messengers of your Lord. So he was not aware who they are, like Abraham was not aware of who they are, unless they told him. They cannot reach you, means Lut was also worried about his own safety anyways, and the rest of the story. So let's summarize. The wrong action of people of Lut was not Lavaat, means being gay or lesbian or homosexual, based on the meaning we have for this word today. But it was exceeding in sexuality, with unnatural methods, not between man and his wife, but in a way to satisfy sexual needs of man with other fahisha or ugly wrong methods. So it can contain being gay, being lesbian, homosexuality, masturbation, sex toys. All these methods can include in this category, but are not mentioned directly which one. Prophet Lut did not offer his own girls in exchange to freedom of those unknown guests, as mentioned in most translations. Think for a while, it makes no sense at all, especially for a prophet of God, without permission of his girls, offer them to some wrongdoer man. Is it correct? It gets even worse if you imagine Lut having, for example, 3 or 10 girls at most, while those attackers, wrongdoers, have been 100 at least, right? So what is the logic that he offer his girl to 100 men to have sexual relation with them? A'udhu billah. This is not just a story or part of his story of 1,000 years ago. It is a pattern, and Quranic patterns repeat themselves over time more or less. Also, as we can see obviously today, females are used as tools to satisfy sexual needs of men, for promotions, for advertisement, and anything. And we bring shahwa to men, we rise sexuality of men without using their own wives being a part of this scenario. And when God at first said that we fazzalna alal alamin, offered you more blessing compared to other nations, all other nations, it is because those nations, for example, nation of Lut and Abraham and Zachariah and others, had a chance to meet prophets or messengers of God directly, in person, while we only have our own brain to think logically and avoid such mistakes. New invented methods for greediness of man to money and sex is endless, not just 1 or 2 to be mentioned in Quran. So God has not revealed the details of their fahisha, fahisha or ugly wrong action of people of Lut, to tell this is an example. So it was on purpose to direct our attention on preventing new methods of fahsha. Not just search in religious texts to see, okay, is gay, lesbian, homosexuality, masturbation, is it mentioned that is wrong or is not mentioned? It is not about being mentioned somewhere. It is about being ugly, and obviously it is ugly for us when we see such things, at least for the first time. Because after a while it becomes like a habit, a natural habit, unfortunately. Even people accept it and vote for it, etc. Finally, the most respectful human in sight of God is not the one with most blessings and most freedom, but the one who could have more taqwa or self-control over his freedom, not to waste his time and blessings of God for any sort of short-term joys and benefits. With this in mind, that we are all made for a higher goal in this life. Wassalam.